blow through all the slides just so you can.
There we go.
It's good on this.
There we go. And we got our own custom.
That good or?
Do you have a mic over there?
There's one right there.
This is the only mic? Ooh, it's off.
Yep.
No, they just threw out the mic again. We don't know about mics now. And
That's a piece of garbage.
sports runnings are good.
God. Don't worry about it. It'll be okay.
Well, there's a camera right behind us.
Do you want me to start?
Want to talk?
I guess I can start. EG's the first one that's done.
Test. Can y'all hear me very well?
Yes.
All right. Well, welcome to fan animation. To the stragglers in the back, y'all move to this side of the room because you need to be able to see the projector screen, and they didn't give us a projector screen, so you need to be able to see the wall. Also, before we start, this isn't our only panel together. We're going to be doing another panel tomorrow at 1 p.m. called Big Pony Projects, How to Start and Finish. That goes into detail about what things like pre-production is like, and how to plan and really get into writing and managing your project. But in the con book, it just says it's fan animation, so it's not. It is a completely different panel, so if y'all would like to join, it's tomorrow at 1 p.m. So, are you ready to start? Yeah.
So.
Alright, hello everyone. I am EG Studios. I am the 2D animator of Venom. I've done projects like How Should Have Ended with I Am Shadow 007. I also did a recent animation project called Alicorn Pop Out. I also did original projects like Sparky the Hummingbird. Won animation awards on that. And yeah, here we'll be talking about the basics of 2D animation. As see, I am the software I master is Two-Room Harmony Animator. I've been using it since 2015 after graduating from the Art Institute. The type of animation style I go for is hand-drawn animation, which many say can be the hardest, but it's the most traditional based animation you can make. It's one of the funnest things that you can do. And the mentor, basically, I am practicing and learning how to animate in Japanese anime style because I do want to evolutionize my work with possibly collaborate with artists from Japan because anime has been a massive inspiration to me. And Western art schools refuse to teach students to learn anime, and it sickens me. So move on to the next slide. So requirements to learn hand-drawn animation. You have to get yourself a tablet. You can find any of them. You can find some of the most affordable ones, like for Wacom, like the Bamboo tablet, like the one on the far right. And if you start improving more with your art skills, if you're good at drawing, love doing concept art, you can upgrade even higher to a drawing monitor in the middle. And there are tons of different brands you can get. The most famous one is always Wacom because they have the most efficient software they have. And hands. Of course, you gotta use your hands when animating, and with your trusty pen, so you can draw over your monitor or tablet. More importantly, no one has brought this up, but I highly recommend buying those half fingerless gloves because when you're drawing, your skin is sensitive to the touch screen. It could scribble your cursor everywhere. So I really recommend getting a glove like that because it does make more beneficial. It's actually more comfortable to wear one when drawing. So you don't have to deal with with the rest of your fingers dealing with Parkinson's or cramps. or cramping your fingers. You just gotta keep yourself organized. Don't start if you can't afford one. Just don't jump too big. If you're still a beginner, just buy like the most simple tablet you can find, so you can work yourself out, learning the basics, and then start advancing as you move forward in animation. Go ahead.
Oh.
I highly recommend scanning that QR code. And that has the 12 principles of animation. It has all the 12 principles to learn when it comes to animating in 2D, hand-drawn, which is, of course, learning the shapes, the squash and stretch, exaggerations, expressions, timing, and anticipation. All of them are there. There is a book I recommend that was written by it was the 9 old men by the Walt Disney Animation Team. The original 9 animators who founded the Disney Animation Studio. They were the ones who were behind the book, and it's done wonders to a lot in the animation industry, especially in education. Next page. Animation software. There are tons of software you can pick from when animating in 2D. There's the one starting from left to right and from top to bottom are Clip Studio, Toon Boom, Flash, Adobe Animate or Flash, and Blender. Yes, Blender does have 2D animation techniques, and it's pretty cool. And I still have yet to try it out. A lot of people will always start with Adobe Animate. It's a basics software if you just want to learn basic Flash, basic animations like Newgrounds levels, like back in the old times when Newgrounds was around. If you want to do a more advanced animation, there's always a Toon Boom you can try because it does have a workspace style in learning hand-drawn animation, as you can see on the screen on the left. It has that beautiful onion skinning where you can see all the frames that you're animating from, and you're scribbling down from your timeline. And most people, when it comes to animating in anime style, they pick for Clip Studio. You can see it has a very anime style on the top far left. A lot, and I even checked that some of the animators from Hazbin Hotel and Hell of a Boss have worked under Clip Studio also, so it still works for hand-drawn animators too, especially when you're working in Western style. I'm still new in figuring out how animating in 2D Blender works, but I have seen there are tons of videos you can find, and what I saw was very interesting. So it makes it more beneficial when you're combining 2D and 3D together. And it makes me curious if they would use that for the next Spider-Verse films or the newest Puss in Boots movie.
On the Blender thing, it's actually surprisingly easy to get into because it works just like a lot of 2D software. It does have onion skinning as well. The nice thing is that after you draw a stroke, because it's just mesh, you can move it. So you don't have to constantly sit there and redraw the same line over and over again until you get it perfect.
And the best part about Blender, it's free.
It's free, yeah. You're free to download Blender from the start, and you just try it out. Next page. All right, when you're starting to animate a character, be sure to, if you're good at drawing and really love drawing characters, be sure to draw turnaround characters. This is what's going to help you when animating in hand-drawn consistently, because when you see animation in television, so there will be times when they cut to another scene, you sometimes see the same character drawn differently, and you see that a lot in shows like Steven Universe, which was a bad example. The best way is, again, learn how to draw shapes, learn how to build a character using simple shapes like circles, squares, whatever, and just drawing them from their 3/4 front view, back view, and 3/4 back view and the front view. side view also, and you'll be able to master this style perfectly the more you get into it. Like a hand-drawn animation takes a while if you're only animating like 5 seconds, because you gotta give as much detail as possible with a lot of movement too. Also, this is the first time you're seeing a brand new OC I designed. She's been in my head since 7 years. And her name, okay, I'm not gonna spoil what her name is, but she's a little pony I thought of when I was on vacation in Hawaii. She's a Hawaiian pony. So, next page. Oh yeah, if this is for those who want to learn how to animate in Toon Boom Harmony. When you're working in Harmony, be sure to have your menu screen under a hand-drawn workspace. As you can see, right in the top arrow, I have it all set up in hand-drawn. And yes, that's the animation I did on Eloquent Cop Out. I should have put the other shot where Celeste's just having a smug troll face at Twilight, and she just cannot put up with her anymore. All the way at the bottom. When it comes to hand-drawn animation, be sure to always work 24 frames per second. Do not work on 60 frames, you hacks. Because really, it's kind of insulting when people start polishing your animations into 60 frames with those AI software, whatever they're calling it. It kind of ruins the feeling of animation, what's meant to be. So yeah, stick with 24 frames per second. Your timeline is your best friend. It helps you organize the many layers you animate from top to bottom. Same goes with the X sheet. It tells what frame are you in, and it tells and it numbers which frame you're in because it acts like the drawing that you drew, and it helps you get to remember where did you ended up at, because you have to get used to learning how to count as many frames as you can when animating big shots like this. The node view is a bit difficult to get used to, but it does help organize the visuals. You can add effects in there. Harmony is amazing with using sometimes 3D effects, particle effects work on Harmony as well. 3D camera movements, and you can easily import them in the node view and just test things out when animating and keyframing. And of course, onion skinning tools. They're always good to help you out when animating in 2D. And I don't know, like does onion skinning work also with 3D animators? No. Nope. Yeah, it's mostly with 2D. Right, next. And here is a footage example of how to break down your animation from the start with an animatic.
Aloha, every pony. My name is Blossom Bud. Welcome to the islands of Hawaii. Hope your trip from Las Pegasus was a smooth cruise. Please take this orchid lane as it brings you happiness and paradise. Mahalo!
There she is. She's from Hawaii. Be sure to, that's how you break down a character from the start. Start with an animatic, give all the poses that you can give them, and once that's over, you start breaking down the character a little more, with more frames, more detail. It's a lot easier. What I highly recommend is just do the shapes first when you're doing all the rough animation, and once you're done with the rough animation completely, start detailing every single frame to have the full body listed. Next page.
Aloha, every pony. My name is Blossom Bud.
Okay.
Welcome to the islands of Hawaii.
Also, that was not I Am Shadow voicing her. That is a different actress that I'll be introducing to once I finish that animatic in public. It'll be released on Twitter very soon.
How dare you?
So what?
How dare you betray me?
Don't worry, I'm not replacing her.
Sugar Party have plenty of credentials.
Yeah.
It's pretty soon.
Shadow and I still work. We still script write. We still direct projects together. We still got a lot of stuff waiting in the next project.
A little bit of an in-joke that Shadow is on every single project of every single person here.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's been good with us.
She was well loved.
Let's see. Perfect. Perfect fluidity. This is the final example of how you animate a character in hand drawn. It has all the fundamentals I put. when animating the hair, what I did is put them on a separate layer, so it doesn't overlay on my rough sketches when drawing her head. So, and that way you can like draw physics when animating a character. Like have their bodies in a still, like in a freeze frame, but their hair is always in a separate layer. And I just love how expressive I gave Twilight on this one. So yeah, this is one of the best ways that will help you benefit your style, animating 2D or hand-drawn. And yeah, that's how you do it. Thank you for listening.
All right.
Thank you, EG.
Roll the slice.
Pearmare, you're next.
Next, we have Pearmare.
It is me, I'm Pearmare. Right now I'm a Toon Boom animator, though I started out originally doing just Source Filmmaker back in the olden times of like 2014-ish. I used to be known as Twijibe SFM, and now I'm Pearmare, and I am not a pear or a mare.
How disappointing.
So do you need a draw to start animation? Not technically. Like, this is a drawing I did about a year before I started up my YouTube channel again. I don't like it, it's not good. I hate it. But soon after, I was like, I'm just gonna start up my animation stuff. I'm gonna start it anyway. And it seemed to start off pretty okay, or like right off the bat, even though I didn't know how to draw, but no one seemed to mind it, I guess. I'm still here.
For now.
For now. Okay, wow.
I guess next.
Alright. So you want to start comfortable and you want to start similar. So you don't want to start off doing something like you watch someone's animation and it's like really intricate and really looks like it took a lot of time. If you're just starting off, you probably don't want to start off like that. You want to start off in a way that you know you can do it and you're not going to give up by the time you're finished with it. So it's a slow burn, and legs are stinky. If I can get away without drawing the legs on a pony, so they're pretty much just potatoes with a head. That's how I like to do it. Because if they're not seeing it, you don't have to do it. And there's a good amount of scenes where you could literally just be that potato in the head, and it looks nice most of the time if you can do it. And you want to start off easy so you can succeed and not give up. So, you don't have to also be a master at doing intricate animations in and of itself. You can let whatever animation program you're doing, just let it carry you throughout your lack of skill. Let your program carry you, because there's so many shortcuts that you can learn in all kinds of programs. Like, for instance, like deformers on the hair right there. I'm not about to, frame by frame hair or do anything crazy. I'm just
Her
gonna.
hair is breaking.
Yeah, I know. But that was just a really quick thing. But anyway, just let it carry you. It literally took 3 seconds to make a nice little hair animation. So if you can just do something simple like that, don't do anything by yourself. Let it be free with the animation programs you have. There are plenty of things on the internet where you can look up information from. Like, for instance, I use the Bird Brain. She has amazing videos, and they're all like 5 to 10 minutes long. I'm just in the bathroom sometimes, and I'm just gonna watch a random video of hers, and it's super informative, even if it's not something I'm like looking for. It's just nice to know, and it is okay to like look up a video and be like, I need to do this specific thing for one of my animations. And you watch like someone's guide on it, and it's okay to like go step by step, just copy exactly what they're doing. Because if you keep doing that, copying what is in the video, you'll eventually learn it in your brain so that you can do it without copying whatever you're watching.
Oh, I want to add, I highly recommend watching the tutorials made by Z-Bird. I see you got Z-Bird right there in the icons. Her stuff is really great.
Yeah, they're super simple and really easy to understand. Shout out to her. Friendship is magic.
Also, I thought about a little more earlier about the voice actress who played my new OC. That was voiced by Nicola Burr. She is a brand new actress who is slowly getting some attention in the fandom, and I think she deserves more of the support she needs, because she is a heck of a talented actress. She is amazing. When I first talked with her, and the minute I showed her my OC Blossom Blood, she instantly loved her, and she's already working close with me on it. So yeah, new partner.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm talking. Friendship is magic is you'll meet people online like how I met Saph pretty much. Well, where you'll contact someone and you'll become friends, and somehow through that relationship of the internet friends, it'll blossom into bigger projects. It'll want you to push yourself more, even if your friend bullies you into doing stuff you wouldn't otherwise do, because I'm not a social person.
Excuse me.
Pear, you just made a pun with my OC.
I did?
Yeah, you did. You just blossomed the friendship.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, sometimes you just need to be carried into social situations, because it is very helpful in order to do things. Because like my anti-up animation, a lot of the stuff in that animation people like the music and everything. That the Saph did the music for my anti-up animation, and a lot of people like it. And I couldn't do stuff like that myself. It would have just been a normal video, like a normal animation. But I feel like because of my friendship with Saph over here, he elevated that animation to the next level, where more and more people like it. And just making friends in general, it's good. It's thanks Saph, I love you.
Okay. Okay. Very good.
And that friendship, yes, can lead to interesting opportunities you otherwise would not have. Like, in a million years, like I started, my animation stuff a year ago again. I never thought in a year's time I would, Prince whatever would have an animation I did for him on his channel. Like, how does that happen? I don't know. But just keep your doors open for anything that comes up, especially with internet friends and people you enjoy being around.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, my name is Minty Root. I'm a 3D environment artist for movies.
Eat it.
What?
Eat it. You gotta do that.
So, I'm a Toon Boom animator on the side. I'm an animation trader because I do 2D and 3D together. I'm apparently the inventor of guys with Mirror-Cs, although this claim is dispute. So, here, I want to start with a story. Once upon a time, I played Paper Mario, and it ruined my life.
Such a good game.
So, Toon Boom Harmony is actually a 3D animation software. You can actually rotate things in 3D space, which means that you can actually set layers with depth with your characters, and there we go. So, for example, you can put the back of the body behind, and it looks funny from an angle. You can put the pieces of the head to be able to rotate them like that, which is very helpful if you want to have head rotations with rigs. You can also put the skull on all pieces and then set an outline generator by just copying and shifting it on all sides, like that. You can build a whole head that rotates in 3D space, and then you're gonna see that it doesn't work like a 3D rig. It can break. You can use a cutter to have that one is technically 2D, but you can have the head where all the pieces are inside the head instead of going outside. You can use those cutters to have pieces that don't work in a normal order, usually with a cutter, which is basically the reverse of a mask. You can use a composite set backwards to have the piece that is technically above in 3D space but below in compositing, so that the outline is technically just generated by the fact that it's supposed to be in front, and it just creates the sideline. You can use the, it's called AutoPatch, which basically just adds the outline just in a way where it's behind the rest of the piece, which means that the outline is always going to be on the outside without breaking, which is really helpful, for example, for mains. You can use the fact that you can import 3D models within Toon Boom with pretty bad 3D render, but you can use it to render very basic flat color and then add an outline with it, which means that you don't have to redraw every frame of that. You can build, and you can actually have reflection of the ground just where the back legs actually match in 3D space, just by taking the rig and just mirroring it in 3D space, so you don't have to have floating characters, which is really helpful when you want to have a scene where, for example, you see a reflection of the ground that is actually matching in 3D space, which if I wanted to match it within the scene manually, it would be a nightmare. Which helps really with the compositing afterwards. You really feel like she's part of that 3D space with the background. You can go and this is how the rig is set. You have all the backdrops for all the pieces. You can set it in different pieces. For example, the profile body is a separate one. You can, for example, the hooves, the different types of hooves are connected with image switchers to have different deformers. So, for example, if you want a different shape for the hoof, you can just switch between those. And for example, for this shot, I switched between different types of rigs like 3 times within 2 seconds, and it works. And all those shenanigans, there's the idea to just trick 2D pieces in 3D space. It really makes animation easier. You can do very subtle movements for very subtle character actions without having to worry too much about redrawing everything. It helps with 3D integration if you want to put them in 3D sets with perspective. It looks cool. And the cons, well, you might get an animation purist who, he has a YouTube channel where he rants if he sees something in 3D, but nobody cares about his opinion. I'd like to show a little example of a project that is currently in production.
Sneak peeks.
This is technically, where's the, there we go. This is technically, there's still a lot to do, and the music is, there we go. So a couple of things that I haven't really covered earlier. For example, you have things like the mount that is actually just a piece with deformers where you have kinematic outputs. For example, the tongue is always at the bottom, the teeth always match at the top. Basically, just with deformers like that, it works well in 3D space. You can cheat a bit by adding an applied bake transform to move the mount in 3D space so it goes a bit more to the inside to assist in the facial expressions. You have cutters, for example, for glasses, so you feel a bit of refraction of those glasses, kind of like if it was done in 3D. Basically just taking a mask for the inside that you don't see the mask in the render because it's not plugged to the display, but it's plugged in the cutter that actually just cuts it out. Then you put a cutter that's inverted and you just move it a bit, and you really feel like the refraction here, for example. What's really cool also working in 3D like that is that if you have to change your mind with camera angles, or you just want to use it to preview or have some previews of what it would look like without having to draw it, It's really helpful. You have some very subtle camera movement for the scenes. I had, for example, I wanted to make sure that this shot would work with the perspective of the set, with the lighting. Just having that was really helpful. I had also that one because I wanted to make sure that you would have you had Raven on exactly at this point because I wanted to follow where she would be in the screen, and then she'd still be around the same place under the frame during that transition. So just having a camera that I could just move in 3D without having to repaint the entire background is really, it saves a lot of time. For example, it's kind of funny. That's one of the disadvantages of working in 3D like that. You do have funny frames, which happens. The fact you don't have to draw does have that disadvantage. You can always just do little changes for that one frame since it goes pretty fast. You have this shot, for example, where I wanted to make sure that the speed it would run at would be just right with the background. So just having that within the same frame instead of just trying to animate a running cycle and then try to match a background afterwards and I realized that it doesn't look right. I could also add a shake note, just have the camera shake like handled. So it was really helpful. Just changing all the shot composition, for example, because I wanted to make sure that this shot would work with the flashback earlier that was from a previous project. So having the camera match like that is really helpful as well. There's this one that is still not complete, but the idea of having the guard and making sure that the perspective would work so I wouldn't have to do cheats with the scale once they go on the top tower here. Because you see this shot, so I didn't even have to cheat too much with the scale to make it work. So just having overhead, and it's quite incredible just the idea that you have all those characters that are in 2D in 3D space to give a lot of depth with the visuals. It really feels one of the inspirations I had was the My Little Pony movie. They had gorgeous shots of Canterlot. I didn't really appreciate their style of how they did Canterlot, which was mostly architectural, but the fact that they had Canterlot in 3D to fly around made it feel so much bigger than what we had with the show, so just having that is incredible. And it's some of the kind of things that you can push with Toon Boom, which is not the most complex software. You just have to be creative with some of the solutions. For example, just the crown, just since I didn't want to have to redraw it all the time, it's just a 3D model with flat shading and an outline, and it works well. So let's go back to the let's move to SFM versus Blender.
Alright, looks like it's my turn. Hey guys, it's Vinson Visions. This is much like Minty, I'm a 3D artist, but except I work primarily in video games. I've used so many different programs over the years. I started with MMD, Miku Miku Dance, initially, and then I moved over to Source Filmmaker, and now I'm experimenting with Blender. And of course I use a human persona because I just wanted something that looked more like myself. And yes, I'm very much a rebel for changing fonts mid-presentation because that's the fun way to do it. And special thanks to my friend Mario Travel 209. He's a really good SFM animator. He helped me fact check my slides because he's been animating SFM far longer than I have. So with that all said, let's continue on. So we're going to be talking about these two programs and which one of them suits your needs more, because there are some pros and cons to these programs, and it really just boils down to what you want in your project. So we'll go on to the next slide here. So one of the pros that we'll first mention is that a lot of things are just kind of given to you on a silver platter through the use of the Source and the Bernie communities. Like, you see Argo Damon up there, his little icon. A lot of assets, whether made by Valve or other just random Source people that aren't even bronies, like there's so many things that you can, just download. Like, you don't have to worry about making models or maps necessarily. It's like, hey, you want Celestia's Castle, you want Rarity's Boutique. You can just download those on workshops or websites, which, speaking of Rarity's Boutique, I think that cues our next video.
Hello, darlings! With a fabulous season of autumn right around the corner, I can't wait to see all of you put out those warm colors and longer sleeves. Oh, and before I forget, to those of you who made the decision to wear Crocs and socks while you were out during the heat this year, I know where you live.
So, that was when I was experimenting with YouTube Shorts with Source Filmmaker, but if we look at that particular animation, too fast, okay. Rarity's Boutique was obviously just a model that an asset that I downloaded on the map. That little lantern you saw on the table was just one of the TF2 items, like Team Fortress 2. So the only thing I really did was modify the lighting in that. Other than that, like, you can just download and plug and then play. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Yep, and this is a couple of places where you can get said items. There's things like Pony SFM, which has Brony-specific content, as you can see. And then there's good old the Source Filmmaker SFM Workshop on your Steam app. You'll find a bunch of Pony and then non-Pony related items on there. You see some Super Mario items. There's a Flying Scotsman model for some reason. But yep, and then obviously Pony SFM also has not only maps, but you can have so many different animations on there. Like people make running, walking, dancing, even specifically like a turn animation. Those can be a bit tricky, but Pony SFM will also give you things like that. So another pro for Source Filmmaker is that it's easier to learn for beginners. As you can see, as the software was made for primarily animation, it is easier to learn for beginners. Unlike other programs that have more complex UIs with a bunch of bells and whistles, Source Filmmaker gets you straight to the point. And because it's easier to learn, you can learn animation faster, arguably. And that's because, as we'll get into in a later slide, a lot of other animation programs, or at least 3D, we're talking in terms of 3D, there's other things you have to consider, like modeling and rendering and lighting and other things, but Source Filmmaker was primarily using an animation tool developed by Valve, and so you have arguably less to worry about, and as you can see, a much more simpler UI. Because Source Filmmaker renders in real time using the Source engine, rendering is more accessible to beginners, as you don't have to worry about render farms and powerful hardware. And again, this is because it was a tool developed by Valve to render animations using assets from their games. And so because it's a video game engine, it will render in real time. Yes, it is a 32-bit, something I'll get into in a later slide, but because it renders in real time, you're going to have a much faster time rendering. And then if you want to customize your maps, you can learn something called like Hammer. And again, you don't have to learn tools like Blender or other modeling programs, which can be really expensive for certain customizations. Hammer is a bit more straightforward, and as a bonus, if you know how to map in Blender, you can learn how to map for any Source game. So if you like Portal, Left 4 Dead, Team Fortress, they all use Hammer. So if you learn how to do that for your animations, maybe you could make a mod. There are plenty of Source mods out there.
Excellent.
And now we're going to get into the cons. So you may have to modify map lighting because one of the downsides to downloading maps is that they're specifically made for certain environments and play areas, because with video games there's a whole different process to how you light scenes. And in this particular shot that I did with Zip and Pip, this is technically an out-of-bounds area. This is CP Manor Event, so it's one of the Halloween maps. And in the real game, you can't go into this area because it's blocked off by gates. So as you'll see in the next slide, if you were to see it with, this is what it actually looks like. There are no lights. And so the scene would be very dark and very boring, and I think the mansion in the background blocks off. So if you go back to the previous slide, I essentially cheated and put like a few different light sources to really kind of sell the idea that, you know, it's nighttime and the moon shining on them. And with custom lights, you kind of get to cheat a little bit and like overexpose them a little bit in comparison to the background. So, and unfortunately, this gets into a pretty big con, which is if you want to customize your texture maps, you need tools like BTF Edit, which has to convert into textures into a format that Source uses. And I can understand why they do that a little bit. I think it's security reasons. I'm not 100% certain, but they don't use things like raw PNGs or TGAs or any sort of texture file. So you have to learn tools like this and essentially export and import, and it can get a bit tedious. You can see Twilight doesn't like it, so I should say something there. And probably even more complicated is that if you want to customize your 3D models, you need to have knowledge of not only tools like Blender, because a lot of people make these models initially in Blender, and Blender actually has a add-on that you can get where you can just export to a file that the source engine can use. But and that tool, what we're looking at here, is called a crowbar, and that's sort of a compiling tool. And not only do you have to learn how to do the program, but you also have to create what's called a QC file. And unfortunately, that involves a bit of scripting, which means that you'll have to go in and edit text files, and you'll have to go in there and tell them where to pull the textures from, where to pull the models from. You need to tell it what engine you're using, and it can just be a really big headache, essentially. And another con you would get to Source is that the amount of you can only get so many shadow lights. As my friend Mario Travel will tell you, is that very complicated scenes you run into the risk of Source crashing, because Source is a very old engine. Even though Source Maker was released in 2012 publicly, it's been around for longer than that. But no, that is a pretty big downside, is that if you want to add any additional lights, you really have to watch out like which ones have shadows and which do not. And yeah, I kind of already mentioned this already, but it is primarily a video game engine. Valve developed it to render cutscenes for their own games. So if you looked at the old promos for Half-Life 2, they used Source Filmmaker for that. And as a result, 32-bit is kind of limiting. There's not many ways that you can speed up the software. And so even if you have like the beefiest hardware, like sometimes it won't capitalize on that just because the asset is old. I mean, this is the Source Filmmaker that we have access to is really only a beta, which technically means it's not the full complete package. It's only mostly complete. And so in summary of that, it is great for beginners, and it gives you a lot of resources, but it does get harder when you want to customize. So if you're doing more simplistic animations, like, I don't know, Rainbow Dash running through the woods, or, you know, that sort of thing, then you'll probably have a decent enough time. But if you want things like custom environments or custom characters, I mean, unless you commission somebody for that, you're gonna have a lot more difficult time using that. So yeah, those are the pros and cons for Source Filmmaker. And next, we are going to get into Blender 3D, which is the other big software option that we have. And as you can tell from the people that spoke to me beforehand, it is a really good tool, and we will get into that right now. So obviously, as someone else pointed out, it's free. Blunder's open source. You're free to download it. There's hardly any catches as far as I'm aware. You can just you can download it today if you wanted to.
You could just take them. There are 43 blunders in my house.
That too.
You better go download it today.
All right, next slide. There you go. Open source. So many people share knowledge of the program. People make code for this. People make add-ons for this. It's open source, so people make a bunch of stuff that'll just make your life easier for it to use. And you can really go in and modify. You can basically create packages. Some people have made custom packages to make 3D anime, which is really cool. I probably should have brought a slide for that, but there's some really good 3D animes in Blender that you can use using custom packages, and that's all because of the open source aspects of Blender.
It's also worth noting, before we go on to the other part, that Blender has a lot of plugins, a lot of community plugins that you can download. Some for free, some are paid, but it makes your life a whole lot easier, like unwrapping textures for meshes, or just even if you want to model a gear, you just get a gear modeler and tell it how many cogs you want on it, and there you go. You got a gear. It's really simple, and it can make your life awesome.
Yes. And another pro is that Blender is slowly becoming industry standard, and it's great for portfolios. I mean, and the key word is slowly. Unfortunately, a lot of studios still think oh, we use Maya, we use Max, which I hate using Maya. I'm sorry, I'm biased. And it's expensive. I think in a license for yourself is $1,500. It's really expensive. But Blender is slowly becoming more of a standard. It's becoming more accepted. I've got a friend who works in the field, and they switch between Blender and 3D Studio Max. So I think in about 5 to 10 years, that'll become a lot more common. You can just say I use Blender. It just makes everybody's life easier. And as Saf pointed on, you can find a lot of paid assets made by other people from places like Blender Market, CG Trader, TurboSquid. There's a bunch of websites where you can just find and download assets if you're not a 3D artist like myself. If you need stuff, you can definitely just find it and search it, and you will be able to find most things on there. That video picture that I have is one helpful tool. 9 websites you should know as a Blender user, and that'll kind of give you more information if you're interested in looking into that. And of course, the sky's very close to the limit here. If you have a lot of time and a lot of patience and dedication, you can make and render pretty much everything. What you're seeing on there is a snapshot of an upcoming project of mine that is a custom set that I built. Some of those assets are store-bought, but most other pieces are made by myself. I did all the composition, I did the lighting, I did the set design, and that just kind of gives you a taste of what's possible as far as that. You would not be able to get those results in Source Filmmaker, especially because everything in here is designed to fit a specific mood, essentially.
Okay, the quote on there is, "You get much better looking renders than SFM."
Yes.
And this actually is not something that Vinson made, but this is something that Valiant Studios made, which I'm the leader of. And it's probably going to look pretty bad because it's on hotel Wi-Fi. If it even loads, oh, there you go. And these are all custom characters, custom models, custom animations. As you can see, it just looks good, in my opinion.
And which render engine did you use for that one, Seth?
Eevee.
Eevee. Eevee is a great tool because it is technically more real time, but you can still get very accurate looking results. Like you can see Dr. Red River, one of my OCs. You can get crisper shadows because you can get physically accurate textures and materials called PBR, which is a video game terminology. You get things like specular values in her hair, highlights, the light kind of bounces off of her fur, and yeah, just generally you wouldn't be able to get this in Source Maker. It'd be very difficult. With Eevee, it's very easy. You essentially just place lights where you want to. You can modify the radius of the lights to get how you can get like softer, crisper shadows. The light that's overhead is the smaller radius, which means the light will be a lot will get a lot of a crisper shadow, and then the light to the right of her, which eliminates the right side of her face, is a softer light, and that's just a simple setting that you can do in the UI. But yeah, you can get some really good looking results. You can see I kind of cheated a bit with her eyes. I actually added a little bit of emissive to her eye base, so just so they pop a bit more. And obviously I added an emissive value in the actual reflections just to kind of sell that stylized look. Easier to do in Blender than in Source because you can just import things like PNGs, which give you automatic masks, alpha masks. And unfortunately, we have to get to the cons now. Don't mind the doctor, she's kind of grumpy because she's been presented all day. So, unfortunately, a lot of, like SF said, you could get something like a gear, but they do, oftentimes they do cost money because, you know, artists should get paid for their work, ideally. I mean, 3D art is a very time-consuming process. I mean, I do that professionally, and you spend hours a day making even the simplest of assets. So naturally, people need something out of their effort. So there's some tools aren't bad. Like you can get some nice add-ons for like sky environments for like $30. You can get like an add-on like for those of you that like Star Wars. There's a pack you can get where you can download a bunch of greebles and just, you know, you can make a triangle and put greebles on it, and then you have like a Star Wars ship. There's a pack for that. I don't remember how much money it is, but it can anywhere from $30 to $60. But it really just depends on how much money you want to spend. All those tools that you can do to make your life easier will cost money, and of course it will add up over time. Another con, obviously, is that you're going to get more complexity with Blender. Unlike Source Engine, that's mainly dedicated to animation, you have to learn a lot of assets of 3D rendering using Blender, like modeling, animation tools, texturing, and lighting. That screenshot that you're seeing right there is a outwards view of that scene that you saw earlier with Red River in her room. That's the silhouette of a planet in the background. You can see all the lights and all the other cheats that I have in there using Eevee's tool. So it's very easy to get overwhelmed. And this is only one of the layouts that you can pick. But no, there's just a lot to consider using Blender. And of course, another downside to that is that with more complex scenes, you're going to require a lot more beefy hardware, especially if you want to get quicker results. Even with Eevee, you could spend anywhere from 10 to 15 to maybe 20 seconds rendering, and that's considered the low end. We're not even talking about things like using cycles, where if you don't have a render farm, you could probably spend like 5 minutes, or probably even longer, which actually begs the question of, whoever here uses Blender, what is the longest render time you have gotten per frame?
I once decided to do a really nice complex animation, and I was going to use cycles because I love the lighting, and it was going to be 2 hours per frame, and I was not about to do that.
Yeah, and if you think about doing 24 frames per second, if you want to do the math there, that would take hours and days.
It would take 2 days.
It would take 2 days.
Several shots of missing out took around 2 hours per frame. I just left my computer to render while on vacation. I just hoped it would keep running.
Yeah, so if you don't want to deal with that, you'd have to consider getting render farms, but you can get some really nice packages to do that. But it all depends on what you want. So yeah, in summary to that, you can pretty much make anything with Blender as long as given time and dedication. It's a robust software that yields professional-looking results. There's a good amount of like indie content up on YouTube and stuff that looks like the real thing. Anywhere from people making Genshin Impact animations to like real fan film stuff. Like there's so much you can make with that. But yes, you can get some assets for free. Obviously, it can be time consuming to learn and get past the scariness of the UI. But you know, a lot of add-ons that will make your life easier will cost you money. So you really have to consider how much money you want to put towards using a program like Blender. And so, with all that being said, in conclusion to both of those, SFM, Source Filmmaker is great if you want to make animations with pre-existing characters, maps, and animations. Like I said, it gives you everything on a silver platter. Blender is great because you can customize and make anything. Yeah, but if you want to make more ambitious, original, bigger-looking animations, Blender is the way to go. But Source Filmmaker is great for animations if you don't need many customizations and are fine just finding a random map and loading it in. So it depends on what type of animation you want to do and how big and ambitious you want it to be. And that's kind of the whole point of this, is it, like I said, it depends on what you want. You can see a lot of really good animations with people like Argo Damon and other people that just use a lot of pre-made assets, and they look really good. And then at the same time, there are also really good Blender animations out there too, but you know, some of those really heavily involve like heavy customizations. Like models from Dimensional Shift are obviously completely new rigs than what we're used to, and a lot of new assets. And for Blender, that's the preferred method. So it really depends on what you want to do. And that's pretty much it for me.
Okay. We're going to talk about sound and music. No more visuals. So, I'm Sapphire. I'm a musician, sound designer, and game designer. I already told you I worked on Dimensional Shift. Outside of Captain Horse at the end there, I believe I am working on every single one of the projects of these fine people here as a sound designer. And if you do use stock sounds, I will do exactly what I said there. Even if I have to, you know, kill myself so I can go and haunt you to do that, I will do it because I'm very passionate about this. So, let's talk about the five senses. What are the five senses? Anyone?
Sight, hearing, touch, smell, and texture.
What's the last one?
ESP, yeah.
So, what are the top two senses? Sight and hearing. So, I'm talking about sound. We're talking about hearing. So, let's talk about stock sounds. I said I would do that to you, so we need to know what stock sounds are. Can someone tell me what they are?
Like stock photographs, but with sounds, like something breaking and it's the same sound all over again.
Yes.
The Wilhelm.
Yeah,
Like the Wilhelm scream, yes. So according to Urban Dictionary, because Merriam-Webster isn't intelligent, stock in this case means mediocre, vanilla, or regular. There's nothing different about it. And just like you said, the Wilhelm scream is a good example of that. The Half-Life death sound is a good example of that. All of the Hanna-Barbera cartoon sounds are excellent examples of that. They are used so much, so often, that they become commonplace and pointless. And can you tell me why it's bad to do that?
It takes you out of the animation, you know, doing something you realize that it's fake and it makes it less immersive.
Very good.
It makes it all samey.
It makes it all samey, and it takes you out of the animation and makes it less immersive. And because it's not how it should sound. But what does it mean to sound like it should sound? Well, let's go somewhere else. What should a cat look like? Should it look like this?
Not sure.
So, yes, I used an AI for this. So why should it not look like that? How do you know this is what a cat doesn't look like?
Because we've seen real cats in reality.
Because you've seen real cats. And so, in the same way, to know how something should sound, you need to hear what it actually sounds like in the real world. And so, we're going to look at some examples. If I can find the cursor. Please be patient. So, these are actually a slight trigger warning. These are real world events of stuff that you commonly see in Hollywood. The first one we're going to look at is a helicopter crashing. Now, as far as I know, everyone was safe. They crashed in the water, and they have training in order to get out of that. But it probably doesn't sound how you think it should sound because you're used to Hollywood. Yes. I'm used to that. That was pretty simple, wasn't it? There was no big boom, there was no big fireball. There was a little bit of a fireball when the blades hit the back and ignited the fuel, but it was pretty simple. Then, how about an A10 Warthog? You know what that sounds like? And there's a little bit of language here, so.
Nice, easy shooters. Yeah, we're cool. Pull back, Ken. Pull back.
Now, what's something you notice about that? Anyone? About that sound that's a little bit off?
There's two sounds. There's the sound of the actual gun firing, and then there's the second sound of the actual impact of the rounds on the ground.
Yes, and when did you hear the gun firing?
Before.
No, you heard it after.
Oh, okay. The second.
You heard the impact first, and you heard the gunfire after. That's a brrr sound.
They're supersonic.
Yes, because the rounds are supersonic. You're going to hear the gunshot well after you see the impact. That's something that most people don't think about, because sound actually has to travel in air. Here's another one, and I just like this one because it's interesting to me. It's felling a tree.
Don't tell Fluttershy.
Yeah, don't tell her.
Your way of setting Blossom Blood.
That was an interesting sound, wasn't it?
That sounds like me.
That sounds like a lion waking up.
Yes, it does. So, back to our examples, or back to our presentation. Those are some examples of what sound really sounds like in the real world. So, just go listen to things. If you want to actually put real sound in your animations and make it sound accurate, just listen to everything around you. So, I'd like to talk about this though. And this is unfortunately a commonality in a lot of animations. It is not an afterthought. It is an art. It is part of the art. Sound design is there to beckon you in. It is the hand that pulls you forward into the world. Yes, the visuals occupy your eyes, but the brain actually psychologically latches onto the real recordings of ambiances and sound effects and Foley art, which is the art of taking what is in the scene and making it sound like it should. Like if I'm walking on a tile floor, it should sound like I'm walking on a tile floor. But I don't record that. I actually put that in later because, well, it's animation, right? It's no less an important part of the medium as the visuals. And in fact, it can even be more important because it can communicate what the visuals cannot. And it can immerse the viewer. Conversely, as we discussed, it can rip the viewer out of the immersion if it's done improperly. So now we just talked about that. Anytime, example time again. So I am going to show you some examples of sound design in My Little Pony, our favorite show. I hope it's your favorite show. Is it? One of? What's the
Yeah, I
other
would
one?
agree, one of.
One of them. Overlord.
I don't know what that is.
Arcane.
Arcane. Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, let me give a good dang hot dog.
Alright, so these are early season sounds. Now I have taken out, or at least lowered the vocals as much as I can. And I want you, after these parts, I want you to pay attention to the background noise.
Does that come to anything so steady? I think sure. That one. Well, what's it good for me?
What is something you notice about the background ambiances?
You know that I'm kind of
Now you hear wind, you hear birds outside, and these are real recordings of real places.
I'm feeling stuck, and the person said to check on the weather. Yeah, that'll be a snap. I'll do it in a jiffy, just as soon as I never let you go, eh? You can see the look on your face. You're on the last one.
Otherwise, she got me.
And you hear the echoing too, that's stuff that you have to add in artificially. However, it adds realism because that's what it should sound like. They even do it to the sound effects.
I'm Twilight Spark. What's your name? Because the nightmare moon is coming and we're running out of time. We just need to be alone so I can study with a bunch of crazy ponies trying to make friends all the time. Now where's the light?
What you're also going to notice is that you can hear crickets in the background. And you can hear different noises when they go to different locations.
Those things are good.
Now you hear weird forest creatures in the background. And of course you hear the water here. And in the castle, it's very reverby. Also, because I am a music nerd, I just want to point out, because I know, like, we watch this show, but I really feel like a lot of it goes very underappreciated. So I'm going to play for you a piece of music that I honestly found was very beautiful just listening to it. And I'm going to turn it down a little bit because it's a bit loud, but here you go. And that's it, because Pinkie Pie interrupts that beautiful piece. Anyways, that, I love the music, it's amazing. That's only a little bit of it though. If you don't mind, I would like to show you this guy's animation here. And his original sound design for it. If he's gonna let me.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh no, not that. Oh wait. I had to bring my software for this. There it is. So, missing out. I'm going to first play for you what the original sounded like. Now, can you tell me anything that's off about that?
Well, the pillow for one, like the movement on the bed was way too loud. And like
Way too loud.
Thumpy instead of like soft.
Pillow is loud and bumpy. What else?
I heard a motor fan.
Yeah, you heard a motor and a fan, yes, and the ambience is quite loud too.
We started outside and we went inside, but the crickets were the same volume throughout.
Yes, we started outside and we went inside, yet the crickets were the same volume. But here is my sound design on that. Now, does that sound like it should?
Yes.
Yes. In fact, what I even did was I got on the bed just like that and flopped around just like Starlight did and recorded that. You can do that. That's called Foley art. It's completely acceptable to do such things. Let's skip ahead a bit to the terrain. Try to be looking for things that just don't sound right. There's music here, for the record. It's why it's a little quiet. So what's some stuff y'all saw or heard?
Somebody we can't see is in a hurry.
What?
Somebody we can't see is in a hurry.
Is what?
Somebody we can't see is in a hurry.
Also,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, you can hear the audio looping. You can hear the audio looping, and it loops imperfectly, and it's just the same thing over and over and over again, right?
Yeah, she walks over like 3 different surfaces and it sounds exactly the same.
Yes.
She walks
Yeah.
through garbage, she walks through tiles, she walks through, I guess, granite or marble, and it's the same sound throughout.
Yes.
I also did hear a motor again at like the beginning of
But yes. So here is the design version.
That train sounds so much better.
So the thing is that it's not that Minty Root is a bad sound designer. He is great, and he did what he knew how to do. But
it's doing it with the goal of making it sound how it should. I had to tediously place every single one of those hoof steps, frame by frame, in order to make it sound like that. Did special magic processing, of course, put reverb and stuff on that. And it's that attention to detail that really makes it a lot more of an art than just an afterthought. So next time you hear next time you hear sound design in an animation, think about, does it really sound like it should? And how could you make it better? And that way, just thinking about that, and you don't have to be critical about it, but just thinking about it, it can help you start to think, how can I do this in my project? How can I do this better in my animation? And that's basically where it started with me. So anywho, that's all. And one last thing. Those hoof sounds that you heard, that is a free sound pack that you can download. I have a card with a link. I can give you cards for that if you see me afterwards. Completely free to use in any of your projects, and they're all custom made. Coconuts. Why would I can't afford horses.
Monty Swallows carrying a coconut.
Monty Python style.
Where'd you get the coconut?
Alright. Hi everyone, my name is Systrine. So these wonderful people just told you all about how the process of creating animation, sound design, like the art of it, right? So what I want to talk today about is it's gonna sound pretty boring. But it is mostly like the production side of creating animations, collaborating with people. You may think that you will never collaborate with people. Maybe you do everything by yourself. But as Saf mentioned earlier, he works as a sound designer on all of our projects. If you're making animations and you want to tell a story, and you want dialogue to be in that story, then you're going to be working with voice actors. Maybe you're working with composers to make music. So there's going to be a lot of collaboration within your projects. So what I want to talk to you about is ways that you can set yourself up for success so that you can collaborate with ease and with as little stress as possible. Did I skip my... There we go. So I am a writer, a film student. I'm currently the director of Wasteland Productions. We are creating a Fallout Equestria animated series. If you'd like to hear more about that, we're going to have a panel here in about at 8 o'clock. So come join us if you want to hear me talk more about that. I will be using some examples here, but mostly talking about the 3 things that you need to as I said, succeed. So pre-production, communication, and flexibility. So consider this a little teaser for our panel tomorrow about talking more about the production side. But I wanted to talk about it here because it's so incredibly important when you're working with other people. The whole pre-production stage, this is your planning stage where you really figure out the core of what your project is, and then create the tools to be able to communicate those ideas to the people that you're working with. So here's how, some things that you can create during the pre-production stage to set yourself up for success. So your story. You want to figure out what you're telling. Maybe it's a really simple story with just a beginning, a middle, and an end. But you want to know what emotions you're going to tell. What are the characters going to say? What are they going to do? You can write a script, or if you're more visually minded, create a storyboard. But you want to make sure that you have everything planned out. You can also, you can change a lot of stuff during this process. It's the drafting process. You can feel free to let your imagination roam and do as much as you want to do, be creative with this. But do make sure that before you move past this stage to finalize those things and to decide whether you're proud enough with it to change as little of it as possible from here on out. Because when you start making changes, you then have to communicate those changes with the people that you're working with, and it can cause a lot of confusion later on. So make sure that you're proud, you're happy with what you've created here with your script and your storyboard, you finalize it, you can move on to creating the next stage here.
And it costs a lot of money.
And it can cost a lot of money. Staff has a first experience with that.
Yes.
This is also the stage where you want to figure out things like art design, style of animation. Maybe you're just going to go with your own style of animation, your own art style that you figured out. But art design can help to tell your story. It can be a part of the emotion that you want to relate. Using this example here, this concept art of Velvet Remedy, this is the art style that we created for Valiant Equestria. A lot of thought went into creating this art style. One, it had to be simple enough that multiple artists working on the project could replicate it. Two, we wanted it to look cute, to be like the G4 art style that we all came to love and that you want to see in a Fallout Equestria project, but also have that hardness that can gel well with the darker like themes of Fallout Equestria, and so there's muted colors, harder hooves, stuff like that. So those are the thoughts, the kinds of things that you want to think about during this stage. Look at that, EG was telling us about character turnarounds earlier. This is a very helpful tool that you can create to be able to easily communicate these things to your teammates. They're images that your teammates can reference if they're working on the animation with you. They're very easy, good ways of communicating those things to your team. I know this is going to seem like, back in school, like homework. Like, this sounds really boring. Production schedules. But this is such a helpful tool. It is literally like a roadmap of your production. A lot of productions that I've seen fail or fall stagnant, a lot of them can be traced back to poor pre-production, poor planning. Failure was almost built into the project from the beginning. And one way that you can keep your project from falling stagnant, if you're in the weeds, if you've lost sight of what you've done and where you're taking your production, where you need to go, this right here is literally a roadmap of your production. You can see where you're at in production and where you need to take it. And this can also be shown to your team so that they know where production is heading, so that it helps eliminate stagnation in a project. It can also help you early on figure out the phases that are going to be in your production. Every production is different. Maybe yours will will have fewer phases or more phases than what I have here. But it's very helpful to plan out a roadmap and make deadlines for yourself. Those will help you to stay on track. Make sure that you, again, are not falling stagnant, that you're getting things done and you're getting that product out. And lastly, this is something that a lot of people don't really think about. It's organizing. At first, it doesn't seem very important, but when you start getting all this concept art, all of your music and sound effects and scripts, and you have just a ton of assets and files that everyone in your team needs to have access to, it's very helpful to have a good organization system so that everyone can find that stuff when they need it. And so using something like Google Drive or OneDrive, like a cloud that everyone can access, and keeping it organized and making sure that everyone sticks to that system that you created so that everyone can find the thing they need when they need it. So those are basically the things that you can do during pre-production to set you and your team up for success. So now that you've planned out your core idea of your project, you need to be able to communicate that with your team. And those tools that I just mentioned before, like the concept art and the production schedule, are good tools. Yes, communication. Okay, your teammates cannot read your mind. And no matter how thorough or descriptive your pre-production documents are, what you envision for the project may not be what they envision. And so there are times when you will have to actually communicate the ideas that you had and give those ideas to your team that you're working with. As a director, it's important to understand your job. So multiple artists working on different sections of an animation are going to come up with just a jumble of tones, a mishmash of ideas that don't really offer a lot of cohesion in the entire thing. And as the director, the guy with the vision, you know the roadmap of the production, you know what it's going to look like, right? And so you have to direct these people so that rather than a mishmash of ideas, it is all, every decision made is within the context of your plan that you made in pre-production. You should appear to have all the answers as the director, but you don't have to have all the right answers. As I'm going to talk about later in flexibility, there are times when your team of very creative people will come up with better ways to communicate things, better solutions to things than you thought of yourself. And it's your job as a director to think, okay, is that actually better than what I came up with earlier in like my storyboard, like my pre-production, or is it not quite in line with what we had in plan, and should we stick to the original plan? And you have to come up with those decisions. Finally, instructions. So it's easy to think that because you created a production schedule, or maybe like a list of things that need to be done, and you showed that to your team, that they will know what to work on next. But most of the time, they need your instruction to get started on something, to know how to create something so that it works within the project. And so you have to make sure that you instruct people to do things. It's also really easy as the director to think that you know all the right ways to do something, so you might as well just do it yourself, right? And then you start sort of packing all of these things on yourself. Oh, I'll do it. And then suddenly you're overburdened, overworked, there's burnout. It is much easier it's not easy. It is much better in the long run to delegate those tasks to other people so that you don't run into burnout and project stagnation. So ways to facilitate communication, Discord is a fantastic way for everyone in your project to be able to see what's going on, see the things that you're talking about. See, we have an announcements channel. There are tons of, you can create channels so that conversation is topical, so that everyone having something to talk about can go to the direct channel. It's just a great way to make sure that everyone is on the same page and that you can communicate things. But one thing that Discord doesn't have is project workflow. So understanding things that need to be done and that have been done, so that even if you, so that people aren't always coming to you to ask what needs to be done. I know I just said that you need to tell people what needs to be done, but so we use a website called Trello that it's very customizable. It is free to an extent, but this is basically just a way that we can anyone can come and look at our storyboards per se, and they can see what needs to be started. Oh, I can take that section, I can start working on that. These are what other people are currently working on, and these are the parts that we have completed. So it's a very easy way for you to keep track of your production and the workflow of your production. And finally, I want to talk about flexibility. So no matter how thoroughly you planned in the beginning, things are going to go wrong throughout the course of production. Things that you maybe forgot to plan, or just you didn't plan for. Things just happen. So remember that production schedule that I made earlier? Well, after a couple months, I had to completely throw out this schedule because I had forgotten to account for the fact that the people working on my project, well, they have their own lives outside of the project. They have school, they have work, and anything that they're contributing to the project is ultimately going to be second to all of that.
going to say, I thought that was a very optimistic outcome.
Right, yeah, exactly. So the reason, so this is was a result of due to my inexperience as a director. I created this very early on in the course of production. I didn't realize, what was going to happen. So that's why that change was made. So I had to throw this out, and yes, you did. Thank you, Seth. But so it led to a deviation from that plan that I created at the beginning. And as a director, when things change, your team is going to look to you for leadership and direction. And you need to be able to provide solutions to them so that production can keep moving smoothly. This means, this is a very important idea to keep in mind, that you need to you want to stick to your master plan that you created, but not religiously. You want to remember the core ideas that you had in pre-production and to change your plan according to those. You're not changing the project per se, you're making a change that will ultimately better the project. In this case, a change from our original pre-production, our original storyboards, is due to creative influences. So in the script, there's a monologue when Little Pip comes out of the stable. She hears a voice on the radio. It's a very long message, kind of like this long monologue. In the original storyboard, we drew maybe 3 frames for that entire monologue. Well, then, as I was editing the animatic, I realized it's really boring to stare at those images when the actual audio that's playing is like 30 seconds long, and you just have these 3 images to look at, one after the other. So we went back, we completely rethought that small little sequence there, created new storyboards for it. You can do that, definitely. It just requires you to be able to communicate with the people, with the artists, with everyone, so that they understand what those changes are, why you're making them, and so that we're all on the same page. So in conclusion, when you're collaborating with a team of people, the 3 most important things that you want to remember are pre-production, setting yourself and your team up for success at the very beginning, communicating all of those ideas to your team, and then being flexible and being able to rise to any challenge and to overcome it. My final advice that I'd like to leave you is that while you might be the director, like the leader of the project, that you're giving the people you're collaborating with instructions. You can always count on them, on your team, to help you out. If you're not sure about what decisions to make, or you need to bounce ideas off of someone else, your team is full of very creative people who want to share in your vision and make it happen. So don't be afraid to ask your team for help, collaborate with them, and make something truly special.
Well, that's it. That is all. Make sure to come to this.
What am I citing a little thing?
Sure, go ahead. Grab the mic.
So, hi, I'm Captain Horse. I wasn't scheduled to be on this panel. I just kind of showed up. Now, I don't want to give this as permission to ignore perfectly good advice. I'm kind of deep in enemy territory here. I am a Flash animator. all these guys are too moving let us up. But I forgot what I was going to say. I like to know the reason why I am using a particular tool. I do things as a matter of course that every one of these people tell you not to do. But it's about knowing the reason why you do it. For example, turntables. I don't use turntables. I barely even draw reference images for animators. But they're a communication tool. The reason you do them is to communicate a design to other artists. And I'm usually working by myself, so I don't need to do that. I skip a step. Because the soul of an animation is in the charisma of it. Technical, correctness and proficiency is all well and good, but if there's no heart behind it, you get the Disney live-action remakes.
That is true.
So this is why like my main normal advice is animate something you are passionate about, because animating sucks. It's tedious. It takes ages. You are dealing with janky software. All of these programs are as technically broken as Flash. I have used many of them. So don't make it any harder on yourself than it needs to be.
And remember, the animation police has no jurisdiction here.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Yes, so come to Big Pony Projects if you want to learn more about what Silver Screen said. We're really going to be talking about how to manage a team, how to manage a big project, how to make sure that you get through it, how to start it, and how to finish it without just putzing out after the first 5 frames of your animation. Because, like he said, animation sucks. Don't do it, kids.
that was the bottom line of my HarmonyCon presentation. It's like, if you want to get into animation, don't.
I think we're out of time, Mark.
We're pushing it. So
we're pushing it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we can't do a Q&A, but you know, if us nice guys or bad guys stick around, you can come and talk to us, ask us questions. We'd be happy to talk with you and answer. Just be polite. Anywho, that's all. Don't want to be turning the light off. Thank you, guys. Thank you for turning the light on.